Okay, so this is a fascinating question. I'll go through as many of the bullet points as I can in just a couple of minutes, but please, there's a lot more to discuss, and the kitchen kashrut, it leads to dozens and dozens of questions. But in our scenario, which again was, if I cooked a parav item, let's say fish, in a meaty oven, and there wasn't real meat being cooked at the same time, so it was on its own in the oven, can I then cook vegetables, roast vegetables, in a milky oven that again was not being used at the same time for actual milk-based products? Can I cook the fish in a meaty oven, the vegetables in a milky oven, and then eat them together? Two parav items, one comes from a meaty oven, one comes from a milky oven. Is that okay? Essentially, in most scenarios, the answer is yes. The complication tends to arise if I switch one side of that equation from parav to meat or milk. I'll give you a really common example of this, which is, again, I just said one, someone's making a nice dish that's fish-based. Let's say you've got a nice fish, nice piece of salmon, and you've cooked it in a meaty oven. Can you then smear butter over that piece of fish? Or let's say corn on the cob, very, very common, delicious with a bit of butter, nice barbecue, just don't eat it with the meat of the barbecue. Can I cook corn on the cob in a meaty oven and then smear butter over it? Now that becomes much more complicated. I'll summarize it as best as I can in just a minute or two. Essentially, there is a difference here between Sephardim and Ashkenazim, and I don't think that's because loads of Ashkenazim are lactose intolerant. It's just the way that our authorities interpreted the Gemara's presentation of this case. So again, corn on the cob or fish cooked in a meaty oven that essentially, I want to qualify this very carefully, was clean and was not being used at the same time to, let's say, have a pot stew or a steak or something else wasn't in there at the same time. It's in there on its own and the oven is basically clean. Can I then smear butter over that fish or corn on the cob? For Sephardim, in most cases, it's completely fine. For Ashkenazim, unfortunately, we are stringent and we wouldn't smear butter over the fish or corn on the cob unless one of the following conditions is met. And I'll go through them one by one. You don't need all of them. Any one of them is good enough. I'll go through them one by one. So condition number one is that the parav food that I am cooking in the meaty oven, which again, the meaty oven needs to be pretty clean, which means you can't see any residue over the walls or the grills. Certainly don't put it directly on the grill because the grill's fully meaty. It's in its own pot, it's parav, and the oven is relatively clean. If the parav item is dry, which tends to not be fish because you kind of usually put sauce on it, bit of liquid. Corn on the cob is a great example that you tend to roast it pretty dry. So if the food is dry, the oven is clean, even for Ashkenazim, it's fine to then smear butter over that corn on the cob. Condition number two, which I know is commonly applied when people are on holiday and you don't want to risk kushering the whole oven and perhaps like burning your Airbnb down. So you cover the food, you just wrap it. If you fully wrapped the parav item that you're cooking, it doesn't absorb the meatiness from the oven around it, and it's thereby completely fine to smear butter or any other milky product over the parav food that came from the meaty oven. And the third and final condition, which again is actually quite common, so the oven is clean of any visible residue of meat, and it hasn't been used in 24 hours. In this instance, where the oven hasn't been used in 24 hours for actual meat, again, it is permitted, even for Ashkenazim, to cook that corn or cook that fish and then smear butter all over it. So I hope that's clear. In a scenario where, for example, you've got a kid's birthday party and you've just gone and done 50 corn on the cobs and they're already smearing butter all over them. So we say b'diavad, if it's done accidentally, even for Ashkenazim, it's totally fine. I hope that made sense. Lots more to discuss. Fascinating question. Thank you so much. Have a great Shabbos.